All right, so where we stopped? We stopped about the social issues that we're facing, the various aspects that require our cooperation interculturally, okay? The other area is that the author has mentioned in the book on page 11 is humanitarian and legal cooperation. We do have a number of humanitarian crises that happen across the world. You can think of probably many. Where if we come together, we can help each other a lot. Like, think about like some tsunami hits an island, and what happens is we respond all together. Different countries send aid and help out. Why? Because when we get hit really hard by something we can't handle ourselves, we are not prepared to throw that many resources sometimes in it. And so it requires our cooperation sometimes, because in the end, when these disasters happen, they do affect other parts of the world. If we think like, oh, that's their problem, that's their issue, well, it does come back to us because we are all connected. And so, you know, like a good example is humanitarian crisis of COVID that we're having right now. You know, it's not a local problem, it's an international problem, and it's not going to go away until we deal with it on a broader international scale. So solving it in one area is not going to make it go away. So political issues, the authors also mentioned that there's different aspects of politics where we must cooperate, and they mentioned the international court, which U.S. does not participate in. You know, I personally don't have huge hopes for that, but that is a good idea. It's not a bad idea, it's a good idea. Whether it will work or not is a different story. The idea of crimes against humanity and things like that, all of that brings up notions of how different we are, because Western morality is different. What we consider discrimination, what we consider to be an infringement on basic human rights in America is going to be very different of how, let's say, China will look at it, right? And so I'm sure, you know, many people in North Korea do not think that they're being discriminated at all, okay? But in America, everybody thinks this is insanity, you know? And so there are some political issues that we can solve, but then a lot of times our own culture and what our culture dictates us as normal will, you know, basically create a dissonance, will create a disagreement even between us. And this is where communication is important, where we have to articulate to each other how we feel about it. There are some more pressing concerns that we must cooperate on internationally, like security concerns. Proliferation of weapons of mass destruction is one big one that comes to mind. Having people holding on to nuclear weapons that can pretty much destroy our entire planet very easily. And just one nuclear war can make all of our lives miserable. Absolutely. Just completely destroy everything forever, you know, for I don't know how many thousands of years. This is a big deal. And it requires international cooperation, because one country cannot handle it all. And weapons can be spread from one country to another. And governments in some country are more stable or less stable, and those weapons can fall into wrong hands. So global terrorism is another threat all the time. Many countries are being plagued by global terrorism. These are real things. There are wars that are going on in the world that are religious wars. Okay, they're based on ideology. They're based on one religion not liking the other religion. There are persecutions of people who believe differently that exists in majority of the countries of this world. I mean, I know sometimes for Americans, it's very hard to realize that in majority countries of the world, people are persecuted for being or believing something and being a part of a minority. Let's put it that way. Their lives are being made difficult by other people who don't believe the way they believe. Now, in this country, in America, we're not allowed to do that. It's actually against the law. You know, but in other countries, it's not against the law. People can do that, and they do that. They persecute others for having different faith, different sets of beliefs. So, and we need to cooperate on that level internationally as well. In fact, the United States offers refugee status to a lot of people who can prove that they're being persecuted on the basis of their ethnicity or on the basis of their religion. And if they can prove that substantially, then a lot of times the United States will grant them asylum, and people can come and live in this country where they are free to believe differently from their neighbors, and nobody's going to, make their life difficult just because they don't agree with them, things like that. So there are a number of areas that we can't afford not to cooperate on. Security concerns are huge. If two countries are having a war, and if you think that that war is not affecting a third country, you're being naive and simplistic, because it does. Wars in different parts of the world affect those of us who are even living far away from those wars. And that's just the reality. That all requires us as humans stepping up and saying, this is not just their problem, it's my problem too. So, and we must communicate. But the challenge is that we don't see things the same way. All right. Now, something that has been bringing us together more and more, the authors highlight on page 15, is technology. Information technology has been erasing some of the borders. It has created a culture of knowledge that didn't exist in the world before. A long time, ago, before digital technology, people's knowledge could be limited. Okay, but today, you actually do not have any caps on knowledge. Anybody can go to the internet and look things up. You don't have to go buy a book. You don't have to be a wealthy person and go to school and learn this and learn that. You can pretty much figure things out. Whatever you don't know, you can teach yourself and learn about by simply accessing the internet, because the internet has a wealth of information that just a few years ago, many people did not have access to. So as long as you have access to the internet, you have access to a wealth of knowledge that is absolutely unlimited. There's so much out there. So you can find out about all sorts of things. And that technology allows us to sometimes draw closer to each other. Now, technology, like anything else, can be used for good and for bad. Okay, we can have an online education like this, where we can actually learn and talk and discuss issues with each other, or we can choose to use the internet technology to spread hatred, okay, and recruit people to fight some terrorist war or something like that, or disseminate wrong information, put a bunch of lies on the internet and make everybody think that something is not the way things are. So yes, it's just a medium. Technology is just a medium, and it can be used for good or for evil. And unfortunately, it's not perfect. But these are all areas in which we must communicate. We have to sort of say, cross the boundaries that are out there culturally and learn how to cooperate on these levels. Because if we don't cooperate on these levels, I think it can cause us all harm eventually. Okay, some countries, for example, I don't know if you know this or not, some countries limit access to technology, and there's a reason why. They don't want their people to know everything that there's to know. If I can keep the population dumb, then they can't help themselves to do anything. Then they depend on me. So there's some governments that choose to restrict certain parts of internet to their citizens. I hope some of you have heard about this. I see Hyung is nodding her head. She's saying, yeah, I heard about that. But there are some countries where certain parts of the internet are banned. Okay, banned completely. Okay, so just out of curiosity, how many of you go to YouTube to learn how to do something? You go to YouTube to learn how to do things, how to do this. I mean, look, yesterday I was on YouTube researching the best microphone for podcasts. I wanted like a really good professional digital microphone, and I wanted to see like what are some of the best ones out on the market. And I got a bunch of videos that do reviews, and they tell me this microphone does this and this microphone does that. For the price of this, you can get this. And it was great. I mean, after like 40 minutes, I think I got the whole education course, on digital microphones, and I loved it. because it was great. And now it is going to save me a lot of trouble because I'm probably going to go and buy a really good one now. Now imagine that in some countries, YouTube is banned. Just banned completely. You're not allowed to use it.
I was go to YouTube for look your class.
Okay.
I watch your class for
You watch
know
my class
more
on
about
YouTube?
for know about more about you and the class.
There you go. So see, I put my stuff on YouTube for a reason. But things like that. Imagine that Facebook is banned. How about that? Why? Why would certain countries ban this type of technology? What do you think? Why would they do that? Besides just, keeping people away from being able to communicate with other people or learning something that, they don't want you to know.
One of the reasons they do that is if you keep someone away from information from outside, it's easier for them to believe everything who is being said inside. So if you want somebody to believe you and the only source of information they have is you, so they will not contrast anything with outside, so they will believe you. So you can be their ruler forever.
Okay, so David basically says, if I want you to believe me, and I want to lie, if I want to lie to you, then I can't let you have a free access to other people and information that might actually tell you that I'm lying to you. So, yeah, it makes sense. That is one reason. Now, I have to say that some cultures restrict certain areas of internet out of concerns for preserving their culture. And I can respect that. Some religious cultures, for example, people in, let's see, United Arab Emirates or Iran, restrict certain things. Why? Because there's a lot of internet, is full of all sorts of stuff, good stuff and bad stuff. And they said, we don't want our young people to learn how to act like this. So guess what? No MTV. Or something like that, they basically shut it off, for the whole country. They're not letting parents make those decisions. They're just shutting off for the whole country. No MTV, no YouTube, no Google, whatever. They choose to filter things for their population because they don't want them to emulate what they see on the outside world. Okay, and that's understandable on a personal level. I think as within our families, we can choose to say, oh, we don't do that. We don't do this. This is not, aligning with our culture and our values. So we're not going to watch this show. We're not going to listen to this type of music or whatever. And so that's a personal decision with people. And when you do that on a national level, on a cultural level, this is a pretty big deal. So yeah, you would see that. And so while technology brings us together, there are still countries out there who choose to control it for their population and keep them in the dark about some things that are out there in the world. I'll give you an example. There was a revolution in Iran that was happening, and the only reason it happened is because of the internet. Because people were able to mobilize and meet each other, and basically the only reason we knew there was anything going on is because of Twitter and Facebook, which the government promptly blocked as soon as the revolution started, because they realized that people were communicating to each other and telling them, meet me in such and such place, we need your help, and they were using social media to reach out. And then they were sending videos to other people asking them for help and, support of what they were doing, or showing how somebody's getting killed or brutalized by the police or something like that, and they were showing those videos to the internet, and they quickly start shutting off the internet. Why? Because they were showing the truth, and the country did not want the truth to get out. They didn't want the world to know that there was any problem at all. So they quickly shut it off, things like that. But the world we live in is very difficult to shut off all the information all at once. And so that's not where we are anymore. All right. So the second part of our lecture that I wanted to highlight for you guys today, and the second part of our chapter, the authors speak about Intercultural Awareness. This is page 17 and forward, okay? And this is actually really important for studying intercultural communication, studying cultures in general, okay? Culture influences human behavior. We understand that, okay? That is, a fact. But it is a lot of times there's a danger in studying culture. When we study somebody else's culture, we can basically become sort of say too focused and too predictable about judgments we make about other people's cultures. Okay, so the authors give us certain qualifications or certain admonitions that studying culture is not really like a simple thing of like, all right, we're going to study the Asian culture. Well, all Asians do this and all Asians are like that. So there's certain things that we have to be cognizant about, okay? And so they actually named 5 different things that we have to keep in mind as we study other people's culture. Number 1 is the uniqueness of each individual. Just because somebody belongs to some culture, that doesn't mean that that person embodies that culture, okay? Just think about it. Just because somebody belongs to that culture doesn't mean they truly are an embodiment of that culture. Why? Because we're all different. There could be some things that are absolutely go completely not in line with the culture of that person you're studying. So then the second one is generalizing. Generalizations can be hazardous. Saying something in general about somebody may not make it true at all about them, okay? Objectivity is another thing that we struggle with. And necessity of compromise and the myth of that communication cures all, that all we need to do is talk about it. So these are the areas that the authors of this textbook really warn us about. These are the common pitfalls in studying culture. So let's talk about it just for a few minutes. What's so special? Why is it important to note individual uniqueness? And as I said, there is really not one person out there who is just like another person. We're 100% unique. Now, we can be alike, but there's nobody exactly 100% like you out there. And this is where, when we study people, when we study culture, we have to be aware, just because somebody belongs to a particular culture, that doesn't make them sort of say a prisoner of that culture. What the authors say, and I think this is a very, very good thought, a very powerful thought that we should probably keep in mind, is that we are more than our cultures. We, as people, are more than our cultures. Our cultures can define us. Our cultures can frame us in many ways. But we, as individuals, are much more than just merely being products of our environment and our culture, okay? So behaviors, how people behave, is not always the reason, should not be attributed to their culture, okay? And that's what sort of say the authors are trying to say. There's this issue of character and our individuality. Characters, a lot of times, are learned from family. A lot of times we kind of inherit these things, but then there's a character parts that we pick up as we learn them from being around other people. And so we must be cautious when we study a culture or a way of life or a way of thinking and projecting that onto a person because they seem to fit into that category. So basically, to summarize it all back, is that people are much more than cultures to which they come from. A lot of times this is the foundation. A lot of times I ask people where you come from, who are you, and that kind of gives me a starting point. But always think of people as unique. They don't always fit in to whatever culture that they might come from or belong to. Okay, so that's one awareness that's really important. Other tendency that we have, and this is just a human thing, we all do it, it's called generalizing. Generalizing. People like to generalize about different cultures and people groups. So the example that the textbook gives is this. It says, when people from other cultures declare that all Americans have tattoos, all Americans listen to hip hop and eat mostly fast food, they're generalizing. Okay? Maybe that's your view of Americans. Okay? I don't know. But you know that not all Americans are like that. You know that. Okay? But imagine you don't live in America. Imagine you've never been to America. Imagine you never met an American. You've just seen one on TV. Okay? Imagine that the only access to real people that we call Americans you have is very limited and very superficial. And you think that this is what Americans are like because that's what you see on TV. They have tattoos, they eat fast food, you know, and they listen to hip hop because that's what you saw on MTV. And that's it. That to you, that's Americans. Very twisted, right? Very untrue. It doesn't represent everyone. And this is what happens when we make these generalizations. We can say things that all the Irish people are really short-tempered. They just, you know, they get wound up really fast, they get angry, and that's how Irish are. Or we could say that, you know, all the Mexicans are always late, everywhere late, all the time. They never come anywhere on time. Well, yeah, maybe many of them are, but not all of them. Come on. And so what we do is we generalize. And when we generalize, it's not fair because we project certain qualities upon people just because they belong to a particular culture. And that may not be true at all. Okay? So generalizations is something we do. We call them typical behaviors. It's not a problem to lean on those ideas, but it's a problem to make them absolute. Okay? You guys have heard about stereotypes, right? You're familiar with this idea of a stereotype. Stereotypes, by the way, can be good or bad, right? Can you guys think of some stereotypes for me? Anybody, just chime in. Let me know. What is a stereotype? Give me an example. It could be about your culture or somebody else's culture. I don't care. Just give me some stereotypes.
So, teacher, I can see in the some movies or in some interviews in TV that most Americans have it's like they think the Brazilian woman is like stereotypical, like not good women's you know, so because you have carnival, but whatever. But I think that the most Americans have this stereotype for Brazilian women.
Okay, so you think Americans stereotype Brazilian women in a good way or a bad way? Do they think Brazilian women are no good?
Bad way.
In a bad way, okay. All right. Good. Anybody else? Give me some stereotypes. Give me an example of a stereotype. Stereotype usually is all these people, fill in the blank, are like this.
Yeah, I think this is our mistake. We always, when we see Orientals and see the eyes, for Brazilians, everybody is Chinese. Or
everybody's Chinese. Yes.
Yeah, Chinese or Japanese. You have a tight
right. Yes.
eyes is our mistake, Brazilian mistake.
Right. I get it. I totally understand, Mateus, and this is, you know, partially just a lack of familiarity, right? Just not being around people like that. Okay,
Yeah.
good. So if you look Asian, you must be Chinese or Japanese because there's no other Asians, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's it. Good. All right. Anybody else? Stereotypes.
So when before I came to the United States, when I heard from my friends, many of my friends, they said most Americans they have a lot of encouragement. So when they say something, they easily exaggerated it.
They
So
exaggerate.
if some guy has some knowledge, or piece of knowledge, he said, "I know all of that." So something like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if they know something about something, they'll say they know everything about it.
Yeah.
And exaggerate. They exaggerate their knowledge. They exaggerate the things. Yeah.
Yeah, and also
That
always,
is
the
that
Americans
is a
always
feature in America. I mean, it's not most stereotypes are not entirely untrue. Let's put it that way. There's truth behind them. But to say that, Americans exaggerate, yeah, you could say that. But then so do Koreans sometimes exaggerate too, right? So we
Teacher,
all
I think it's Brazilians exaggerate too, because this is vision, example, the vision about women is an old vision. It's because what is the internet and TV show for everybody is a woman dancing samba or whatever. But I think it's old vision. It's more Brazilian think about this sometimes than American, because I think when I start living here, I think as Americans is different. I think it's rude and not affection. And I'm wrong, because it's the most of the time American help me a lot for speak English, for understand me. So I think sometimes you think you have a exchange about your people.
Mm-hmm. It's true. No, I understand what you're saying.
So I think the most Brazilian think something's wrong about American, like American thinks something's wrong about Brazilian.
Right.
Yes, but when something is different. Brazil is more joy and more party, and some things like fun. And it's different, right? But it's not better or bad, just different.
Just different, exactly. So Brazilians tend to stand closer to each other. They hug more. They kiss more. They do these kind of things where Americans keep distance. They don't like to stand really close to each other and things like that. So you can read that as the lack of affection, as being distant. I don't like you, or you can realize this is just the way they are,
Yeah. And I think it's because now Brazilians have a bad time because coronavirus. And I think it's because it's hard for Brazilian respect social distance.
Yeah.
It's hard because it's not.
Because the culture is against that. It goes against.
Yeah, exactly.
I know what you mean. Actually, those are the countries that are having the hardest time with the virus. They can't respect social distancing because their culture teaches them not to all your life. And all of a sudden, now you have to change. You can't change that quickly. It becomes hard.
Yeah, the vision about Brazilian women is old. The bad vision is old vision, because we have a lot of women, important women in history, have a beautiful and important work for humanity, for the people. So I think everybody need to think better about it.
Good. So stereotypes is that. They don't necessarily have to be true. They can have truth about them, but not always. Okay,
Exactly.
good. Thank you, Deborah. I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Fabio, did you want to jump in on the conversation? You wanted to add something? Okay. All right. Fabio's opened up his microphone. I was like he wanted to jump in. Okay. So stereotype.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
I think so. There's another mistake. My phone is working.
You're good. Go.
Okay. I think so. There's another mistake you have in your country is a long time ago, the people use the tattoo,
Mm-hmm.
tattoo,
Yeah.
and that people is bad people.
Bad
Yeah,
people.
yeah. The we think about these people is just the use tattoo is defining who you are.
Yep.
Yeah, it,
Well,
it's
yes.
not now, but a long time ago.
Yes. Well, but if you think about it, in American culture,
People
that's a
think
very
about the
common thing.
tattoo is bad people. Yeah.
Yeah. But in American culture today is a very common thing. Lots of people wear tattoos. It's almost like wearing clothes, right? You want to express yourself through certain clothes, they express themselves through tattoos. It's kind of permanent, which is a problem. Fashion changes, but
Mm-hmm.
tattoos kind of difficult to change. But yeah, I get it. And so,
Yeah.
so in your culture where you come from, if somebody has tattoos, it's seen in a negative way, right? It's a bad person.
Yeah.
I get it. Where I come from, and you guys need to know this about me. I was born and raised in Russia. I'm not really an American. So I've been living in America for a long time. Most of my life I lived in
Yeah.
America.
Not now, but a long time ago.
Yeah, a long time ago.
Now
That's
it's
perception.
common the people has tattoo. Yeah.
I grew up in my country. If you have lots of tattoos,
Mhm.
that probably means you're a criminal.
Yeah.
Because the place where you get them is in
That's it.
jail. And that's like, okay, if I see a person with lots of tattoos, even today, I'm thinking, is that
Oh
okay?
yeah, like
Is
Brazil.
he okay? Is she okay? Like, why? Why all these
Mhm.
tattoos, right?
Yes.
And but these are our stereotypes, and so we all do it. We're all guilty in some way,
Yeah.
but
Exactly.
not all stereotypes are bad, right? Can you think of any stereotypes that are good? Give me an example of a good stereotype.
Yeah, I remember. I know two different Indians, natives Indians in Brazil,
Okay.
and different tribes, and they fighting a lot between each other. And one time, one of these tribes kidnapping a kid after this battle,
Mm-hmm.
and go and take home with the kid. Then this kid growing up and became a big guy, but
Mm-hmm.
a big guy. Then everybody in this tribe look, whoa, look this guy. Oh, we'll never go to fight again because everybody is afraid. Because look, this guy is from another tribe, and look the how big this guy. Then this is stop the fighting between the tribes.
Right.
Yeah, just stereotype and put the end in the fight between each tribes.
Good. I wish it was that easy every time. I wish it was that easy every time. So, any examples of good stereotypes?
A good stereotype, I think, is American. When you don't live in America, you think all America have a good situation, have a graduate, have a student, good house. You think
Yeah.
everything is amazing.
Right. Here's the good stereotype about Americans.
Yeah.
All Americans are rich.
Yeah, it's rich.
They're rolling in money.
Yeah.
They just got money coming out of everywhere. Well, you guys have been living in America for a little while. You saw the difference. That's not true.
Yeah, I don't think you think it's rich, but you think you have a good situation. Don't have a problems.
They don't have problems. Oh yeah,
Yeah.
they're everything is great in America. Yeah, it is a generalization, and it's definitely is a stereotype. A lot of times people feel that way, but then they come and they realize that America is just like a country like any other country, right? Same problems, different place. Maybe a
Poor
little bit
people.
different problems,
Yeah.
but still problems.
Yes. Mhm.
So good, good. All right, so that's good. So there are good stereotypes out there. There's one stereotype that I run into all the time with people. This is very common. Everybody thinks in America that Asians are great at math. Okay, Hume goes, no. She goes, no, no way. It's not true.
Asian, I think everybody think Asian is good for everything. It's intelligent.
Everything. There you go.
Yeah.
But particularly like among students, all right, and on school campuses. And I've seen this, and this is not fair, okay? Because like a math teacher would look at the Asian kid because they're not doing so good at math, and they would look at them and say, what's wrong with you? You know, you're supposed to be good at math. You're Asian, right? So it's not fair because they put an expectation on somebody because of the way they look. They automatically have to be good at math. And the truth is, yeah, there are a lot of Asians who are good at math, but not because they're good at math naturally or genetically. They're good at math because they study hard. It's the study habits, essentially, that people are noticing. And so there's truth behind that stereotype. But it doesn't mean that if you're Asian, you're automatically good at math. So, you know, and that kind of stuff, you know, or all Americans are rich, all Asians are good at math. You know, we can come up with these kinds of positive stereotypes. They're not really saying anything bad about a person, but we're still projecting on them something that's not fair. That's really what stereotypes are, okay? All right, so this is something that the authors say in a textbook that I wanted to highlight for you guys. So on page 19, they talk about that cultural generalizations. They say, first, cultural generalizations must be viewed as approximations, not as absolute representations. What they mean by that is that there are certain things that are true of certain cultures, okay? Americans are very entrepreneurial, right? We know that. Look how many businesses Americans start. They're very much into starting businesses and doing things like that. So it's a cultural observation, and it is a generalization. It doesn't mean that every American is good in business or entrepreneurial, but we could say that we can use that observation as a approximation, not as an absolute. So whenever we make a judgment about a culture, it is important to keep it as approximate, not as exact. There are some truths to these things, okay? But there never should be made an absolute. So that's the first thing. The second thing that the authors highlight is that when you do make those generalizations, they should deal with primary values and behaviors of a particular culture, core values, okay? And those values and behaviors occur regularly and long enough time in order for us to correctly identify those values, okay? So primary values, not secondary, not tertiary values. These are kind of big things. So can we make generalizations about cultures? Yes, we can, but we just simply have to be careful about it. So for example, when I say that Americans are very independent-minded, that's a generalization I make about Americans, right? I say Americans are very independent or free-spirited or whatever. That's a positive thing, but I have to say, well, that's not absolute. That doesn't just necessarily mean that if you're American, this is how you're going to be. Number two, how do I know this is true? Because I've seen that most Americans behave that way. Or even if not most of them behave that way, most of them believe in that. And given the chance to behave that way, they will express that part of their culture, okay? Being very independent-minded or things like that. Very sort of, say, individualistic and looking at the world, for example. think a lot about in terms of how does that help me? How does that move me forward? What's in it for me idea? Or if I say Americans look at time as a utility, that's generalization. Time is money, right? Have you heard that before? Time is money. It's a very American saying. Time is money. That's how Americans see time. That doesn't mean that every American will see time that way, but many will. So how do we know? Because we've seen so many people treat time in exactly that way. So this is a very core value of American culture, the importance of time and the value that people put on the actual time. And so we can make that judgment, we can make that generalization about American culture, and it is fair because we've actually observed it many times over in enough people to kind of, you know, prove it to ourselves. Now, the third thing that the authors say is that when you use generalizations, try to use those that can be supported by a variety of sources. Like, how do you know that Americans see time in such a valuable way? Well, we have a saying, time is money. Americans, when you come to see them, you must make an appointment, right? Maybe you come from a country where you just go see your friends and you just go by their house and just knock on the door and say, hey, and they open the door and they're glad to see you. Come in, have some tea, have some coffee, whatever. Let me make a cappuccino, or let me pour your a cup of green tea, whatever it is. You know, you have some kind of hospitality ritual, right? So somebody just knocks on your door and they drop by and it's normal. Well, in America, you knock on the person's door and they're like, what do you want? Well, I just wanted to hang out. I just want to spend time with you. And they're like, well, why didn't you call? Make an appointment, you know, make sure that I'm not busy. Make sure that I am free to spend time with you, because right now I'm busy. I can't do this, you know? And so while in another culture, people will drop everything they're doing and say, hey, my friend came to see me. Great. Let's have some tea. Americans are going to say, no, 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 no. You call me ahead of time. You make an appointment. Then we get together. We decide on a time and a place. Why? Because the way I see time, time is very important to me. And this is my time. This is not your time. And you're taking away time from me right now that I was going to do something else. So you see, that's that idea in American culture about that. So when we use these type of generalizations about how Americans see time, for example, we have to be able to support these generalizations in a variety of ways. We have to observe that behavior. It's the things they say, it's the things they do, it's how they structure their lives that makes it very clear that time is valuable. Time is regulated, you know, things like that. You know, if you make an appointment and people are on time, then that's considered to be a good thing. If you make an appointment and they're not on time, people get mad at you, right? In America. In other countries, that might not be the case, you see? But that's because they don't see time the same way Americans do. So, and that's the third point, you know, that you have to be able to support your generalization through a number of ways, okay? And the final point that they make about generalizations is that conclusions and statements that you make about culture, this culture is this way or that culture is that way, has to be qualified so that it's not seen as absolute. Basically, don't make it 100% kind of bulletproof. This is how Americans are, you know, because some are not, you know, and so you have to be flexible on that. So this is the idea about generalizations. So as we said, recognizing, looking at people's culture, recognizing that people are unique, generalizing, but generalizing carefully. And the other aspect is objectivity. You know, we have to try to be objective. And it's very difficult to be objective. You know, what is objectivity? Objectivity is when you're supposedly not influenced by your feelings, by your interpretations. You're not influenced by any kind of prejudice you might have, a like or disliked. That prejudice or like or dislike can be based on facts or not on facts. And the point is that you're supposed to be able to put it all aside and just say, I'm objective. You know, I look at things as they really are. And the truth is, it's very hard to reach objectivity. Objectivity is very difficult. I would say most people are not objective, and even when they try to be objective, they're not. It's like water. It's like trying to hold water inside your fist. It's just difficult, because here's the thought. All of us are products of culture, every single one of us. And when we think we're being objective about somebody else's culture, we're actually judging their culture by using our culture as a standard. Like, how do you decide what is right and what is wrong? Well, because your culture tells you what is right and what is wrong. When you see another person behaving in a certain way, you say that's right, or you say that's wrong. But how are you deciding that? You're deciding that based on your culture, because of what you've been taught that's right and wrong. So it's very difficult to be objective, because we ourselves are products of our own cultures, which are not objective. They are subjective. And it's difficult to put all of that aside and just operate as if we don't have any feelings on these matters. So there is one aspect of our sort of say objectivity that gets damaged by this particular idea the most. It's called ethnocentrism. Ethnocentrism, and this is on page 20. I'm talking in the objectivity section right now in the textbook. Ethnocentrism. Have you guys ever heard that term? What does that mean? What do you think? How would you define ethnocentrism? Kind of in your own words. Just any working definition would do. Anyone? Ethnocentrism. What is it?
Can I read the definition of the ethnocentrism in the textbook?
You can. But I know if you say it in your own words, I know that you understand it.
Yeah, actually, ethnocentrism is you judge someone's, other people with your, culture. So it's culture. Like if someone someone didn't make a mistake, but he did whatever he pleased. But once you see them, other people from different countries, and you think that's something wrong. It's no matter kind of things. Yeah. So, for example, the wearing hijab.
Yes.
Yeah, and then actually, and still in the United States, it's really rare to see them in a shopping mall or any other places. But it's kind of a. But actually, I saw some of my neighbor who wear the hijab, but only it's really rare. So showing all of your appearance, it's like normal, but but you cannot understand why they still wear the kind of hijab.
Right.
Just judge with your own culture. Your own,
right.
The thinking.
Right.
Yeah,
so yeah, a lot of people who come from a non-Muslim background, they don't understand what's the big deal about women wearing a hijab. She's talking about hijab is, it covers everything except your eyes. That's it. Just the eyes is what's open, and everything else is covered. You can't see the hair, you cannot see the face. That's it, just the eyes. Yeah. So ethnocentrism essentially is us being focused on our own ethnicity. Our own ethnicity is the center of our world. And we think that everybody else should be like us because we like us. We like, so let me play with you guys. I'll pick on my Brazilian friends just for fun. You guys like Brazilian food, right? Is Brazilian food better than American food?
Of course.
Of course. See, I knew you were going to say that. Brazilian food is the best food in the world, right?
It is.
American food cannot even come close to it.
No.
You're being ethnocentric.
For me, yes.
And it's okay. You're being ethnocentric. You like your own culture, and there's nothing wrong with liking your own culture, okay? Absolutely nothing wrong with it. But
Professor.
that's an example of being ethnocentric.
Professor.
You focused on it. Go ahead, David.
I have just to change one thing in what you said. We love our food, not so much our culture.
But your food is part of your culture.
Yes, but we received from other cultures because a lot of our
Right.
foods came from Italy and Portugal.
Sure. Yes. But there's a particular twist that exists out there, you know. So, and then every culture is going to say that. Every culture is going to say, you know, Koreans are going to say, oh yeah, Brazilian food is excellent, but ours is better. You know, I still like Korean food better. That's what Koreans are going to say, you know, and everybody else is going to have that perspective on it, but they each are going to, you know, show their like and their preference of their culture. And that's being ethnocentric. The truth is, everyone's food is everyone's food. There's no such thing as better or worse, you know, objectively. But to you, it seems like your food is better, you know, or music. Oh, you know, the music in my country is so much better than the music in that country, or vice versa. I mean, she's shaking her head. We're shaking her head no. So it's just, there are different things that we like about our cultures, and we tend to be very focused on that. It could be language. It could be anything. It could be how we raise our kids. It could be our healthcare education system, whatever we're proud of ourselves in our country. We tend to be very focused on that, and we say that's the best. You know, Americans are very ethnocentric. Okay, Americans are very ethnocentric. They would say, I always laugh at Americans when they play baseball, and they have what they call World Series. Ever guys watched World Series of baseball? Okay, how many countries of the world actually participate in World Series? Okay, Mateus is laughing because he knows where I'm going.
Just one.
But we are the champions of the world, right?
Yeah.
So if only one country, well, actually there's two. There's Canada and the United States. You know, but if they're the only countries who participate in this world competition, well, it's not really world competition. Like you take soccer and you have World Cup. How many countries participate in that? Now you're really champions of the world, right? When you take Olympics, that's a different story. But when I laugh at Americans with baseball in the World Series, because that's being very ethnocentric. They think that their little game that they play between them and Canadians actually means something, so they call it world, you know. It's silly, but you get it. So ethnocentricity is when we're so focused on ourselves, we can't see everything else. We don't appreciate everything else that's outside of ourselves. We can get caught into that, thinking that our culture is the best, our culture is superior, and it's okay to have a little bit of that, but it's not okay when we go too far with it. When we say we are the best, we are superior, and everyone else is less. Everyone else is worse. Everyone else is not as good. And that's when we become judgmental towards other cultures just because they're not like us. So the judgment qualification becomes they are not like us because we are the best. So the only way to be the best or as good as is to be just like me. And if you're not like me, well, you're not good enough. And that's the negative side of it. So that's David. Go ahead.
We have something similar in Brazil, kind of like I see a lot of in Brazilian groups as well. Like when you see advertisements and say, "Oh, the best burger in town," but you have like 10 other food chains that use the same kind of words and same kind of advertisement. And when you see, did somebody have a recommendation of an electrician or technician to come to my house? Oh, call blah, blah, blah. He's the best one. So everybody says that somebody they know is the best one to do the service. So, so all the Brazilians are the best ones except those against them. So it's kind of hard.
Yes. And I think that's true in most cultures. That's true of most cultures. That could be a part of the exaggeration that we've talked about. And Deborah talked about exaggeration. So I noticed that some cultures are prone to exaggerate a lot more than other cultures and make very loud claims, right? So to pronounce something to be the best is really to exaggerate, right? When you don't really know if it's the best or not. Have you compared all of them? No. But I think this one is the best. So it's human, you know, but some cultures are more free with exaggeration. So, you know, the culture I come from exaggerates all the time. Everything is exaggerated. You're not hungry, you're starving. You're not cold, you're freezing. See, everything is next level. You can't just say, you know, I am bored. You will say, I am dying of boredom. You know, I can't take it anymore. Things like that. Everything is extreme. And some cultures are like that. They like to communicate in extremes. And that's, again, other cultures are more measured. All right, so we're having fun with our textbook, guys, as our time is coming to an end. I just wanted to tie up a couple more things in this chapter. The authors talk about seeking compromise in intercultural communication. A lot of times people see compromise as a loss. I don't know what about you, what culture you come from, how you see compromise. To some people, compromise means you're losing. Okay? You're giving up something, and that's not acceptable. Other cultures see compromise in a positive terms. And so what the authors of this book encourage is that the only way we can truly reach any type of, you know, constructive communication interculturally is to learn how to compromise. And if we see compromise negatively, then we would not want to compromise. But if we consider compromise as acceptable, you know, and kind of a win-win situation. See, Americans see compromise as win-lose. I win, you lose, right? But you can see it as a win-win. I win, you win. Why? Because you gave up something and I gave up something. But in the end, we both got most of what we wanted. Right? Everyone is satisfied. We walk away. So it's a kind of a psychological thing, but basically, you know, compromise is a very, very important skill that people need to learn, and they need to not shun compromise, because in the end, if we want to get things done, sometimes we have to give something up to gain something else. Otherwise, we get nothing. So, I mean, I tell people, I'll give you $100, and they're like, okay, that's great. I said, how about I just only give you a half today and half tomorrow? And they're like, no, I want it all now. I said, well, no, the only way this works if I give you half today and half tomorrow. And they're like, no, I want it all now. You see, sometimes you can have half of something or all of nothing. So what would you like? What would you rather have? Half of something or all of nothing? And that's what compromise is sometimes. Sometimes you have to give something up. It may not be perfect, but in the end you gain. So, and then the last point that the authors make in this textbook as I wrap up this session is that communication is not a universal solution. And this is a point that needs to be made. It's important. A lot of times when you go on TV, when you go different places, you see people always pushing this idea. Well, if you have a problem, you need to talk about it, right? If you have a problem, just talk it out. Let's discuss it. Let's talk about it. Well, yes, that is how we solve problems, by discussing them, because a lot of times we will find a solution in the midst of our communication. But the truth is, talking about it will not always solve it. In fact, sometimes talking about it will make it worse. Okay? And so simply discussing an issue will not necessarily resolve it. And that's an important distinction to make. And when we have a conflict, when we have a problem, talking about it doesn't settle it, unless there's some sort of a compromise that's reached in the middle of that talk. So it's best to discuss these things and bring up problems, but with the goal of finding some sort of a practical solution, rather than just say, all right, we've talked about it, now that it's out, it's solved. No, not really. Until we settle their differences, it's not. So it's an important distinction that communication is important, but it doesn't solve everything. It only moves us closer to solution. And now you kind of jumping into this idea of intercultural communication, you could see how it's very, very important to talk things out. Let the other conversational partner know how you feel, what you think about these things, but it doesn't necessarily settle it. So it's just a starting point. But we can't get anywhere without that starting point, which is why people should study intercultural communication, because it actually does move us to the next stage. All right. So that's pretty much it. That's what I wanted to cover with you guys in this chapter. For the next session, read along, read forward. We'll discuss chapter 2. As you read, make notes, think about examples, think something you want to share with class. I love talking to you guys. I love hearing your examples, your thoughts, your ideas. I think they make this class more fun. So I enjoy hearing from you. So next time, same place, same time, we get together, we continue going through the book. I will update the syllabus and probably write you a little note to let you know that I posted a new version, so you'll have that. Okay? Any questions, any thoughts before we close out the class? We're all good? All right, fantastic. So what I'm going to do is I'm also going to take these videos and I'm going to post them on YouTube and make some links for you guys. So in case you need them, or for those who missed them, they'll have them. Okay? Fantastic. All right. Thank you for coming, ladies and gentlemen. Appreciate it. Be well. Take care. Stay safe. Stay healthy. And I'll see you next week.
Thank
Same
you.
time.
Thank you, sir.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
See you next.
See you.
Okay, have a good
Bye.
afternoon. 나가기? 나가는 거 어떻게 나가지? 나만 못 나갔나?